Chefs of Reddit, what are some red flags people should look out for when they go out to eat? Got out of food service a while ago, but I came to understand something. Health department scores can be wonky around here. If you have food that is out of temperature, you lose a point. If you don't write down what the temperature was, you lose 10 points. Required to measure and log every 4 hours, having expired product on the shelves or in the coolers, you lose 2 points. Not having day dots on the product, you lose 10 points. Any prepared and stored food product must have a day dot, says which day it was made so you know when to throw away. An employee handling money then returning to the kitchen and not washing their hands is 5 points. Not having a sign in the bathroom that says employees must wash hands loses you 20 points. If you see restaurants with scores in the 90s, there's probably something gross happening. If you see restaurants with terrible scores, it's more than likely that they forgot to write something down. Obviously, if they're not going to take the care to chart things as they're supposed to, then they may be cutting other corners. I remember my first health inspection though. Almost failed because we didn't have signs in the bathrooms. Literally had no other violations. Yana health inspector, but I used to work with them on investigations, so I do know how these go. You're right, health inspections are simply a snapshot of the activity on one day in the restaurant. However, you know you're supposed to log these things. You know you have protocols to follow. And you know certain signage is required. If not you, then your manager or operator on site is required to know and do these things. Forgetting to log food temperatures is not a trivial mistake. It often results from a repeated series of neglectful behaviors. We require those logs so we can trace back problems should they arise. We require those logs because they ensure the safety of those foods from spoilage. I've investigated large-scale outbreaks at restaurants with scores in the high 90s. Sometimes shit goes wrong, literally shit, as so many of these outbreaks are fecal orally transmitted, and we understand and want to mitigate the problem. The health department isn't there to shut you down. We get it, you have jobs to do to make money to keep a roof over your heads. We just need you to do your job right so nobody has to spend the next 3 days barfing and shitting their guts out. This should be a red flag, I think. Went to a Chinese restaurant. All of the customers were white or Indian. The owner was Indian, and most of the staff were white. Not a Chinese person in sight. Place looked run down and the menu was ambitious to say the least. Ordered anyway because I was hungry. The food turned out to be amazing. I can see the logic. Indo/Chinese is a weird hybrid, but delicious. I grew up in Miami, and if someone mentioned Chinese food, you would tend to clarify whether they meant Chinese or Comidas China. Which, while it translates to Chinese food, is a Cuban-Chinese hybrid. Again, delicious, but a bit different. Not a chef, and more a green flag. If you're eating ethnic food and all the customers are of the ethnicity in question, then the food is probably going to be freaking awesome. Good observation. I live in London and I too use that system. Turkish restaurant near me is always packed with Turkish people, and a Chinese restaurant nearby is usually packed with Chinese people, and in both places the food is outstanding. What are the restaurants called, please? Also a Londoner. In addition to a super large, diverse menu being a huge red flag that you're getting frozen meals run through the microwave, watch for no substitutions. If the place makes its own food, they can sub virtually anything for anything else. While they may try to play it up as our food is perfect and we refuse to change it on moral grounds, it's almost always a sign of this was made 2 months ago and all we do is reheat it. This can go either way. What you're saying can be correct, but there's more to it. I used to work at a place that had no substitutions, but they made everything to order and as close to from scratch as possible. Why did they have the policy? Because during the rush, people would come in and sub something so much that it wasn't even a menu item anymore. This would throw off food costs sometimes, and make tickets drag out of the kitchen a lot. You know what makes people bitch more than anything else? Slow food on their lunch break. It got to be so bad that the owners, who owned a number of restaurants, bailed on it and sold the place. Edit to add an important detail I'd forgotten to include, because people cried about it so much, they repealed the policy, and then the bullshit was even worse than before. I was briefly part of management there before it closed and got a look at the books, and they were in the black. The hassle of dealing with the picky yuppies at the location wasn't worth the amount of profit for them. They were in the black, but they weren't deep in the black, something I was told months later when I ran into one of them and asked why they'd sell a profitable business. Was there a reason so many people were requesting substitutions? I've worked in a fair number of kitchens, spanning a variety of cuisines and price points, and 99% of customers don't ask, or even know they can ask, for substitutions. Every kitchen I've worked in was more than happy to sub. It's hard for me to imagine that enough customers were, simultaneously during rushes, subbing enough that it would cause notable pricing issues or delays. If you ever order something with crab, always ask what kind of crab is it? Even though it might sound like a snobby question, it will reveal whether it's canned or not. My favorite answer when I went out one time was, "What are you talking about?" Clearly indicating it was not fresh. Edited. Or, accept canned because I live 1,000 miles from the ocean. I moved from Maryland to Oregon last year and I underestimated how much I would miss blue crab. I no longer care if it is canned. Ex-husband was chef. We always left if he saw workers not wearing non-slip shoes. He says that's super important, and if they don't care about that, he doesn't even want to know what that kitchen looks like. Local spots can be different. I've worked for some mom and pop places with extremely clean kitchens and we could wear whatever shoes we wanted as long as they were closed-toed. I'd say for chains to be cautious of that though. Just pop your head in the kitchen, if you aren't blasted with 120 dB of yelling you're in the wrong place. That place is terrible. I stuck my head in the back and my ears were only slightly ringing for the rest of the night. Ask where your oysters come from. If they don't know, you don't want them. Works for most seafood. Excuse me, but can you tell me where your clams come from? The ocean? Please don't refer to our waitresses that way, sir, it's incredibly rude and demeaning. Weird, the microwave from Applebee's hasn't chimed in on this thread. Edit. Wow, thanks for the gold. My first time ever. That's 'cause Chef Mike is the hardest worker in the biz. He ain't got time for our Reddit shenanigans. I love the scene https://u2.b/w6rvmn0 of Gordon Ramsay executing Chef Mike at some restaurant by throwing him out a third-story window. A green flag is an open kitchen where you can see everything getting cooked. There's an open kitchen diner where I live and the food is killer. Not always the case. I've seen some pretty nasty open kitchens that have heavy focus on sight lines to make sure what the customer sees is clean, but everything else is trashed. Not a chef, but worked at a KFC for a while, so here's a KFC specific thing. There are 2 towel colors for cleaning use at KFC franchises, at least in American ones, no idea about others. There are yellow towels, which are intended for surfaces that cooked foods will touch, and blue towels, which are only to be used in raw chicken areas. This is to prevent cross-contamination. Cooked chicken never touches raw chicken areas, and cooked and raw areas are never cleaned with the same towels. The thing to look out for? Raw chicken areas are usually not visible from the front counter, at least in most locations I've seen. If you see a blue towel, don't eat there. Now this isn't a hard and fast rule. I would recommend asking the cashier about it if you see anything suspicious. When I went to Europe, a KFC location in Amsterdam had blue towels and cleaning solution on top of all the trash cans in the lobby. They weren't for raw chicken, they just had a different cleaning procedure there. Perhaps they were following the common cleaning branch color coding: blue equals interior, red equals toilets, yellow equals kitchen, green equals floors. Edit. This standard appears to have originated in the UK and may be more common in Europe than in the USA. https://www.nisbeats.co.uk/color-coded cleaning. Nah. It's a KFC and big chain thing. They usually have front of house and back of house one-time use towels. Inspected many big chain places and they are usually the best about maintaining these practices since there is so many levels of management, government inspections, corporate inspections and third-party inspections, the last two which affect employee raises and bonuses. Former health inspector here, if there's a self-serve soda machine go ahead and take a napkin around the inside of the Sprite/clear soda available nozzle. If your napkin comes out pink, brown, or orange skip the soda. A Sprite nozzle should come out clear. If it's pink or orange then it's slime mold, it's actually a bacteria, but that's what we called it. If it's brown, it's likely cola. But if the cola nozzle was put on the Sprite dispenser and is still brown you know the nozzles aren't being cleaned properly. Also go ahead and look closely at the ice chute. I see green algae in those a lot. Ice bins never, ever get cleaned. Eck. I took over managing a hotel bar and the first thing I did was create a cleaning schedule. I had the ice well as a daily shutdown activity, and the bartenders lost their shit. Said it was too much work. So I started emptying it to assess the situation and the whole bottom of it was a thick layer of deep green algae. I put a strainer down to catch anything not water as it drained, then showed the whole staff all the goodies I had collected, like fingernail clippings, glass, food, a screw, etc. They were absolutely horrified. Still bitched every night about having to clean it though. I have worked for many restaurants and been to many others. If the place has low lighting, unless it's intentional, roughly no customer activity, floors aren't clean, place smells bad, booth seats move, drinks that taste funny, not a drug joke, this is a sign that they don't clean their soda fountains or tea urns, and low quality customer service are all signs that you should look out for if you're going to eat. If a restaurant is poorly maintained, the food might not be of good quality either. This, especially in fast food places where you can get your own drink. You can usually glance and tell when the soda/tea nozzles haven't been cleaned in a while. Never get the ice. More than half of the ice machines I've opened up are full of mold. A friend of mine said that in his restaurant they usually reuse the vegetable garnishes https://i.com/vi/jv5kqnvte/maxresdefault.jpg from previous customers if they didn't eat them. I always make sure to cut up everything on my plate even if I'm not eating it just to make sure it doesn't end up being served to someone else. I actually like playing with the food I'm not eating. When I was a kid, I used to put a lot of salt and pepper on it. I hope no one had to eat it. If the place is surrounded by cops and ambulances, you should go elsewhere. Don't complain to the remaining employees about the wait and demand a free ice cream. I trust people working ambulances to know the safe place to eat from. Ha. 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 We're stuck with what's convenient and can get our food out before it's noticed that we've stopped. Read Anthony Bourdain's book. He runs down the bunch. Brunch is just using up leftovers from the rush of the weekend. Generally worse quality food. Smaller menu is better. Mondays and Thursdays are typical new inventory days. Eat these days for freshest food. Only order shellfish from the shellfish restaurant. Know what a restaurant does well, and order that. There were a lot, read his book. R.I.P. Tony. He emphasized to never to eat fish on a Monday, because nothing can be ordered over the weekend and there's a high chance you'll get whatever was still left over from Friday's delivery. And then many years later, he said that the book had become outdated, and the food supply chain had improved enough that you probably don't need to worry too much about it. He also mentioned that his outlook had gotten better and maybe he might have been wrong. Rats in the restaurant cooking food. I saw a movie about that once. I think the movie is called Remy. I've heard that if you actually smell fish at a sushi restaurant, it's in your and your inside's best interest to hightail it out of there. Sushi is another one for when in doubt, there's no doubt. If it smells like trout, get the fuck out. If it smells like salmon, keep on slamming. Salt shaker. If the holes are clogged and the top is dirty, that thing has been refilled 100 times without washing. Mine gets gross after a couple weeks in the humidity. But it's little effort to wipe the tops with a dry rag every night. Overworked staff. What cleaning jobs do you think are getting missed if staff are far too stretched and or unhappy at work? We avoid restaurants that are constantly having staff turnover for this exact reason. There is a place here, open less than a year, constantly advertising for staff. Right now he has 7 positions open out of maybe 15. If it is an ongoing issue, it is probably mismanagement. Unhappy employees handling food just makes me uncomfortable, to say the least. This is a little tough to do because the restaurant industry has notoriously high turnover. Even places I really enjoy have pretty consistent turnover. Not saying it's cool/okay, just the nature of the business. If you can't see their health inspection score posted out in the open, it's probably not very good. I'm not sure how it is for other states, but some googling around and you can view most restaurants' scores online for free. You might have to be a chef to recognize this, but my red flag is going into a busy restaurant and noticing none of the tables have food, or not many customers are yet eating. This usually means the kitchen is going down in flames. One time I noticed this and could see some food slowly stacking up in the window, but no orders coming out. I mentioned it to the server and he replied, "I wouldn't suggest ordering food." He brought our drink check and we left. He was tipped well for his honesty. The other day we went to a restaurant a little afternoon and it was packed with the lunch rush. My husband suggested maybe we get fast food, but I looked around and said everything was going to be fine because 80% of the tables already had food or a check. This reaction surprised him, because he's used to me seeing a crowded restaurant and saying nope and turning around. He doesn't understand what I'm looking for, which is a sign that the servers have shit under control, or are in the weeds. Not a chef but my best friend is, and he says a large menu. Chances are a lot of things on a menu means that they are frozen. Also, it's difficult to train people to be good at making 40 different things, so the quality is going to suffer. If the dining room that you can see is dirty, the kitchen you can't see likely is as well. Specials are typically food they are trying to get rid of. Sometimes this stuff has been in the freezer for months, other times it might be on the borderline of expiring. Not a chef, but ex-restaurant manager. How happy is the staff? Do they seem like they like their jobs? If the staff are miserable, you're not going to get quality food or service. It's worth seeking out restaurants that treat their staff well. If they're treated well, they'll treat you well. This is the number one answer. Does it sound like it could be 2 or more restaurants? Example, sushi and pizza at the same place. They can't do either well. How dare you insult Kentucky Hut Robbins? I wasn't a chef, just a humble stock boy, but I can say this, a good amount of hot food isn't truly kosher/halal, and a lot of seemingly vegan food isn't. 9 times out of 10, it's a result of ignorance. A skillet that made sausage during the breakfast shift might not have been washed before being used to blacken chicken or sauté vegetables for lunch. Simple mistakes that can be attributed to human error and shift changes. 1 time out of 10, it's a result of necessity and space. 2 meats might share a tray due to a lack of space. This is more a result of the menu dictating the kitchen, instead of vice versa. If you live by strict, voluntary, dietary restrictions, diners such kosher restaurants, halal restaurants, and vegan restaurants will always beat one restaurant with kosher/halal/vegan options. Yeah, restaurants that run on a basis of religious or political guidelines are usually safe. My husband has alpha-gal allergy and we're always nervous about ordering vegetarian items, because I remember how when I was a vegetarian how hit or miss the ingredients were. In some cases servers, chefs, or management legit don't give a shit and will serve vegetarian dishes with hidden animal ingredients or cook a veg burger in the same pan next to the meat. I've even had it happen intentionally because vegetarians deserve it, and it's made worse because alpha-gal is rare and a mammal allergy sounds like made-up nonsense. For someone who's veg by choice it's not the end of the world, but for someone with meat allergies it actually can be. For that reason I usually feel safer eating at Hindu, halal, kosher, or strict vegetarian places because they all are usually very strict about how they handle meats. Edit, link to alpha-gal info https://n.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/alpha-gal_allergy, if anyone is interested. The more people know about it, the better. If the head chef is crying and not wearing any clothes, it's probably best to move on. Went to Italian restaurant one night, ordered drinks, apps, mains. Drinks come out and we're waiting, eventually waiter comes over, "You should leave, you are not going to get food tonight," then goes on to explain that the chef got into an argument and left mid-service. Lol, so we left. Amazingly, this place is still open 10 years later. Too many menu choices. Dirty restrooms. Server staff seems more anxious. You just described a good Asian restaurant. The Chinese place we order from is so good. I'm not sure they've ever cleaned their front door, like not even wiping it off with a damp cloth. I'd hate to see what the kitchen looks like. Not a chef but a huge fucking menu probably means you're eating out the freezer. Not true for Thai or Indian as they're different composites of smaller dishes that are prepared first. Right? From what I understand, most Indian restaurants use a master gravy, not gravy in the Western sense, then add certain spices, and pre-cooked, braised meats. You can make an entire menu of 15 or so dishes using this sauce. This wouldn't include dishes like dal, which is a dish you can't make to order, needs to be simmered for more than an hour but can be made earlier in the day or week and will keep in the fridge to be reheated. Same thing happens in some Italian restaurants. Tomato passato is made in bulk earlier in the day/week and you can sauté things like onions, garlic, chili, bacon and more, add a scoop of passata, then add pre-cooked pasta to hot water for a few moments, then into the pan, toss and serve. Or cream if it's a cream-based dish. Bolognese, like dal, is made earlier in the day/week then reheated. Sorry for all the commas.